Welcome to Restore My Song, a space to be encouraged by two friends who love Jesus and see His purpose in all things, even pain. Every episode you'll hear real stories from real people who asked, "How am I going to make it through this?" and found God's redemption. Here's your hosts, Joia Hyde and Rhema Toll.
Hello, and welcome to the third episode of Restore My Song. Already 3. Woo!
It's amazing.
I'm Rhema.
I'm Joia.
And today it is my honor to get to interview Joia a little bit and have her tell some of her story and how God has walked with her through all sorts of crazy seasons and good seasons. Yeah, it's always a good mix. Yeah, so I guess I'm trying to think of if there's anything kind of funny that's happened lately, or I don't know, what's been going on in your world?
Well, I'm learning how to be a better cook. And so I just cooked some deer meat tonight, and that was new for me. I had never done that before. But I'm actually recording a podcast, as you can tell right now, and not eating the deer meat. So I hope my family's enjoying.
You might be having an ice cream sandwich for dinner later tonight.
We'll see what happens.
No one's going to judge if that's your dinner.
Nope. Not at all.
Nobody.
Not at all.
You just have to hide everything from the kids. The wrappers, the stick. I know how this goes.
Yeah, but it smelled good. Like, I mixed it in with a pasta sauce. It looked like it was going to be good. So
I'd try it. I'd try
I
it.
know you would. You're very brave. Very brave.
It's true. I think a lot of people would call me culinarily brave.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or eating brave.
Way more adventurous than me. The things you come up with, I'm like, it sounds interesting. I don't know. I'd probably be happy just eating plain turkey sandwiches every day. Really. Like,
they are so good, though.
They are.
Really.
Yeah.
And if I think about it, that's kind of where my life comes back to. Like, I remember really pondering meal prep a little bit, right? Because we both have big families.
Yeah.
And I finally realized my kids eat the 10 same meals in rotation.
Mm-hmm.
And once I just started, like, ordering grocery ingredients for those 10 meals, and then once in a while deviating, I was like, oh, I've got this.
Oh, it's so much simpler that way. That's what I do as well. There's no reason to deviate from that because it just stresses everyone out.
Yep.
You know?
So, here we are, having pickier eaters than we ever thought we would, but maybe they'll look out of it. My oldest has been trying some new stuff.
That's good. My kids tend to be less picky than me, which is nice. Yeah. Wow. And they're like, "Mom, why aren't you eating your dinner?" I don't know. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
But my mom just told me yesterday, you were the hardest kid to feed. And I remember being that way.
Now we'll launch into Joia's story. Okay, so my first question for you, Joia, is tell us about a time the Lord restored a piece of your story you thought was lost.
Okay, so in order to bring you to where I am now, I'm going to go back a ways so that the listeners can kind of know a little bit more about what led me to this place. So I am a mama of 5, but I have 7 babies, 2 of which we lost during pregnancy. One was our first pregnancy at 8 weeks and 2 days. And then we lost another baby in 2017. And I was 14 weeks and 5 days with that baby. And my husband and I had been on a really long journey of, it took us 5 years to get pregnant in the first place. I had tried fertility meds. There's so much that happened in my life that led me closer to Jesus through pregnancy and loss, that I would have never been in the place that I was spiritually when the story that I'm about to tell you happened. Like, I've thought about this for so long. Every step of the way that I went through, Jesus was preparing me to rely on him more and more. So let's fast forward to 2023. And I found out that we were pregnant with our 5th baby. And we were so surprised, as we were with all of our babies. Like, after there was so much surrender in our pregnancy journey after our losses, like, we really just left it up to the Lord. And he blessed us so tremendously. Our kids now are perfectly spaced out by 2 years. And we could have never planned that if we tried, but they're at fun ages of 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10 right now. Which is fun. I remember telling my husband that I was pregnant, and he was like, oh boy. It was the first time when he was very nervous. And to know my husband is to know how stoic of a man he is. He's just not very, he doesn't have outward emotions a lot. So this was a shock to me. I was like, I'm surprised that you're nervous. And he's like, I don't know. I don't know. PTSD is what he said. And I'm like, I get it. And if you've ever been through a pregnancy loss, you know, like, those feelings just, they don't leave you. Getting through that point of pregnancy where you lost a baby before, it's huge emotionally. And so trying to get through that first trimester, trying to get to those points, it's a lot. So everything went well with the pregnancy, and it came time for him to be born. And I went into the hospital the morning of December 19th, and labor was progressing really well. Really smooth. And I was a stubborn woman. I was like, I'm going to go into the hospital at 7:30. I'm going to have this baby by 2:00 in the afternoon. It's going to be done. And my previous labor had been pretty quick, so that's what I was expecting. That's not at all how this went. It was smooth, but it was slow. And so come 9:00 at night, I'm finally ready to push. And everyone's starting to come into the room. Thankfully, they were, because instantaneously, like, we had just sent out text messages to our family and friends saying, we're ready to push. Everyone's doing great. Instantaneously, I experienced the worst pain I've ever felt in my life. And I imagine it's similar to what it feels like to be shot. It was a pain in my lower abdomen that would not go away. It wasn't, you know how contractions come and they ease up. This
Totally.
wasn't easing up. In fact, it was getting worse, and I couldn't breathe. And so they came in, they're trying to assess the situation, and all of a sudden there's like, man, it seemed like there were so many people in the room. And I couldn't see very well. Like, honestly, I probably went into instantaneous shock. They laid me back. They laid me on my side. And they called in, like, my midwife was there, and she told me, she said, we got to get this baby out, Joia. And I remember saying to her, I'm okay. Everything's okay. We can just do it. And she had to kind of look me right in the eyes and say, we got to go now. And a doctor came in. My husband, I could see him kind of out of the corner of my eye signing papers. Wow. And then they wheeled me into the hallway. It was fast. And they told me to say goodbye to my husband. And so I looked at him, and I knew in that moment, I had convinced myself in that moment that I was going, that I was not going to see him again. And I don't really know how to explain that to people other than it was just this overwhelming feeling of, this is it. I told him how much I loved him, and I smiled as big as I could. I just wanted him to be at peace, and I was okay. You know, I was like, I'm okay. So they get me onto the operating table. And again, this is all happening so fast. To give you a time frame, from the moment I cried out in pain to the moment they got the baby out was 8 minutes. So this all happened so fast.
Yeah.
But they were putting me out, and the anesthesiologist was not a godly man. He said he was mad at how something was going on, and so he actually took the Lord's name in vain right before he got me put under. And I was like, yes, that's the name I need to hear right now. Kind of a funny twist of things. But I remember he said that, and he put the mask on, and then I was out, you know.
Yep.
So yeah, they got the baby out. What had happened is my uterus had ruptured. And later on, I found out the surgeon told me that it was the worst uterine rupture that they had ever seen. So they were prepared with blood for me. They were prepared with all the things, crash carts, whatever they do. I've watched some medical dramas. I know a few terms.
Right.
And Mr. Miracle Baby, he was born without a pulse. He was born not breathing, as discolored as you can possibly imagine. There were no signs of life when they pulled him out. But God put breath into that boy's lungs, and they life flighted him to a children's hospital that was hundreds of miles away, and my husband got to go with him, not knowing my condition. But my husband did get to see me before he left, and I was waking up, and I was shaking and so confused because, like I said, I thought I was dying.
Right.
And the first person I saw was my brother, who had come to watch my other kids. And I saw him, he was all gowned up and stuff, and so I just saw his eyes. I was like, this is so weird. What in the world is going on?
Yeah.
But my husband had convinced them to wheel the baby like past me. Like if we could just move her past the baby in the hallway before they do that. And so they agreed to it. And this was a moment that the Holy Spirit just came upon me so heavily. Again, just barely conscious from surgery. And I saw this baby bring him over, the whole flight crews behind him, ready to go. And I prayed over him like I've never prayed before. And I saw his little lip quiver. And I knew in that moment that he was okay.
Wow.
It was so crazy. I saw life come into this boy. And I knew he was okay. I knew he was healed. I knew everything was crazy, but he was going to be okay. So I wouldn't get to see him again for 4 days. I stayed in the hospital hundreds of miles away from him. And if any moms are listening, they know like that's trauma, right? To not be
so much with your newborn baby. Like,
yeah, it was hard. But I had dear ones like you, Rhema, that stayed by my side and made sure I wasn't alone, made sure I was okay. But I did have to stay alone in the hospital one of those nights. And that night started something that would become a process of spiritual warfare that I had never really encountered before.
Yeah.
That night was such a dark night. It was the second night I had been there. The first night, my poor brother had to stay with me. Bless his heart. That was rough.
Oh, right. Oh my goodness.
But the second night, it just worked out better for everyone, like schedule wise. My parents were with my kids, it was what it was. I was alone and I was okay. I had told everyone I will be fine. I will be just fine. If you ever have to stay in the hospital, please have somebody stay with you if at all possible, because it's just it's a lonely place. And, you don't get much sleep in the hospital. And so I think it's just better to have people with you. But, so that night I just started having this spiritual attack where the enemy was telling me things like, you're not going to make it through this. You should have died. Why do you think you get to live? And these thoughts were so loud. Like they were so loud. I was like, what is going on? I kept looking around the room like, what is happening?
Wow.
And I was alone. I can laugh now because I think back on it, and man, if a nurse would have walked into the room at just the right moment, they would have been like, what is going on with this woman? Because I remember having to verbally say, you're not welcome here.
Yeah.
Please leave. I am
Absolutely.
covered in the blood of Jesus. Leave my room. Leave my room. And he did. So I got to travel, and with my parents' help and my sister-in-law's help, and so much support. It was Christmas. It was a week of Christmas. I had 4 other kids. It was such a journey, but we traveled for miles. And of course, my body was in rough shape. Like I was trying to downplay it as best as I could, but I was struggling.
But you just been through abdomen surgery, right?
Yes.
Complete abdomen surgery.
Yeah, I should go back and say, like, they didn't have to use the blood transfusions. Like, they didn't have to use a crash cart. And they were shocked. Like, everyone I talked to was just shocked. But I was still, like, they repaired my uterus and they put it back in my body and it hooked back up. And so they just left it. But you know how after a surgery, they like try to get you up and walking quickly?
Yeah.
That didn't happen for me. They made me lay down for hours afterwards. And I was so, like, it was hard to breathe. I was getting like these gas pains in my shoulders from the drugs, and I couldn't breathe. Anyways, long story short, I was in rough shape.
Yeah.
And we had to travel far in the winter. And God's mercy, like his hand of mercy was all over that trip. The roads cleared up for us. My kids did so well. Yeah, like you, Rhema, had tried to drive those same roads the day before and you couldn't get through.
Nope.
So it was just miracle after miracle and mercy after mercy. So I get to the children's hospital and had to say goodbye to my kids again. And yes, my physical body was in rough shape, but I was experiencing so much anxiety and so much it was a dark cloud. That's the best way I can describe it, is a dark cloud. And of course, I was like, I'm going to shut this down. I'm not going to feel these emotions. I'm just going to get through this. I'm going to do everything that I have to do to get this baby well and to get him home, to get my other babies home, and be on the other side of this. And I did. I remember even, like, I had to ride on an elevator in a wheelchair to get up to the NICU. And it hurt so bad. Like, just the physical pain of being on an elevator.
Friend.
Yeah, it was something. So then we stayed in the hospital for 10 days and he did great. Like his MRI, they cooled him on a cooling blanket to like reduce brain swelling. He had some seizures. They had to put him on anti-seizure medication. But then they warmed him up. They did an MRI on Christmas Eve and he was perfect. No signs of trauma, no signs of anything having had happened. And everyone, like the medical team, I remember this entire group of neurologists came into the room and they're like, we can't really explain this, but he's totally normal.
Wow.
And, you know, I was like, I can explain it. Jesus did this. Like, this was him. This was him. And I could go into depths about what my husband was praying in the hallway and all of that, but that's his story to tell. And I know that there were people praying for us all over the world, legitimately all over the world. And that was an incredible thing to experience and to know. And that support didn't stop. When we got home from the hospital, we had meals, we had friends. We had so much family that just poured their love into us and really just made sure we weren't alone. And my husband got to take the first 6 weeks off of work, thankfully, and it worked out well. However, like I said, my physical body was in shambles, and I was living under this dark cloud that I didn't really want to tell anyone about. And it was not my first experience with postpartum anxiety or depression, so I knew what it was, but I had gotten through it before, so I was like, okay, this is going to pass.
Yeah.
But this time it was different. This time I got home from that hospital and my body hurt so bad. And I was like, okay, I have to feed this baby for a year and then I don't think I can do this anymore. I started having thoughts of just, I think that my family deserves better than my body that can't function properly.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't tell people those thoughts, but I sure had them. And it wasn't until, I want to say about 6 weeks or 8 weeks. I don't really remember the time frame. You know how when you're like in that sleepless state when you don't know anything?
Yeah.
I had the worst panic attack of my life. And it was something out of a crazy movie. I had been watching Miracle Baby like a hawk every minute of every day. I had trained myself not to sleep. In the NICU, I stayed up for like 37 hours straight once. Not because I should have, but because I just felt like if I went to sleep, something bad was going to happen.
Yeah.
And I had this panic attack and I thought something was wrong with him. You know how newborns are just weird and they do weird things?
Oh, yeah. They do.
And so he was doing this weird jerky motion. I took a video of it and everything. Like I thought there's something really wrong here. And I showed it to my husband and he's like, Joia, he's fine. He's okay. He's okay. But I couldn't see it. I could not see it. And I had to take my kids to an activity that afternoon. And my friend Rebecca greeted me and she could tell something was wrong. And she actually asked me, are you okay? And it was the first time that I told somebody, no, I'm not okay. And she was the first person to validate those feelings and say, what you're feeling is normal. Like you have been through something here. Like this is not, you're not expected to be perfect at this right now. And so that was a turning point for me. And it was that very afternoon that I reached out to you, Rhema. And I said, I need some help. I don't remember exactly what words I used. I remember being just terrified to send the text, but I knew you were the person I needed to reach out to. And I said something along the lines of, I'm dealing with this bad anxiety. I think I told you about the panic attack. I think I told you about his weird movements.
Yeah.
And you set a meeting up with you and our dear friend Conoco for a day, like 2 days later, or something like that. So this is where I finally get to answer your question of
I love it.
yeah. So thank you for everyone listening that you actually stuck with me through that. But you brought me into that place, Rhema, of prayer, where you allowed me to feel some of those emotions that I had been suppressing for so long. You allowed me to replay some of that scary stuff that I went through, and allowed me to see Jesus in that. And
Yeah.
I stopped seeing only myself in some of these situations, and I started seeing his hand. Like, I could tell other people till I was blue in the face that it was all Jesus, but I wasn't believing it for my own piece of the story. And I needed to tell you and Conoco in that time that I was having the dark thoughts, that I was having the thoughts of my life not being worthy of living anymore, but I didn't know how. So I remember I was feeling better after we had prayed and he had led me through that, but I still wanted to tell you that. And so in the only way I knew how, I shared a story about a friend that I had a few years back that actually lost her life to postpartum depression.
Yep.
And it was just brief, but it was enough for Conoco to pick up on. So we're literally standing at the door saying goodbye, and Conoco says, "Let's pray against any suicidal thoughts."
Yep.
And I stopped having the dark thoughts after that moment. It wasn't an immediate release of all the anxiety or all the depression. Like, heck, I still have days, right?
Right. Yes.
But
Yes.
it was a lifting of those thoughts that the enemy was trying to put into my head from that night alone in the hospital. Of, you're not going to survive. You're not going to make it through this. You shouldn't have lived in the first place. Man, he was mad I survived that, wasn't he? Like,
Oh, so mad. So mad.
So that's my story. And I have been on such a journey of allowing Jesus to love me through this healing process and to do that through other people. You talked about this a lot last episode, Rhema, of just being okay with the help that he sends.
Yeah.
I didn't ever want to seem weak, and that's pride, right? Like my pride was all over that, where I'm like, I am a daughter of God. I am not having suicidal thoughts. This is not happening to me.
Yep. Yep.
And I was struggling so much that I didn't want to tell anyone. Isn't that crazy?
Yep. So crazy. Yep.
But I don't think that I'm alone in that. Like, I think that there's other women that go through this experience or have a traumatic birth that sets something off in their brains that they've never experienced before.
Absolutely.
And it feels so overcoming, like so overwhelming. And I can tell you now that I am so far on the other side of it, his grace is so, so powerful. But you have to let people in. You can't suffer alone. So he's continued to restore that piece of me. But yeah, it was a big turning point for me to share that with you and to have Kaneko just be in tune with the Spirit and be like, wait a second, there's more here we need to pray over before we
something
send
deeper.
our friend. Yeah. I don't even think I fully shared that with her, but maybe she'll hear this story. Because it's not like I said to you, yes, that's what I needed you to pray for. That's not how that went down.
Right. And talk about like what an act of faith for Kaneko to bring that up even, such a deep topic, hard topic. And it's like, I think I'd be afraid to maybe say something like that, So she was the right time, the right place.
Yes.
And sometimes we have to do that when we're praying for others or serving others. It's just like
uncomfortable,
seems dicey or uncomfortable or taboo topics. And it's like, no, there's nothing taboo for the Lord. And he wants us to walk all of this out in community. Absolutely.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I've thought about that a lot of like how uncomfortable that must have been for her. Or like, was she nervous to actually say that out loud?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's that.
That's so good.
Yeah. And I'm happy to say, like, even my physical body, I've been on such a journey. And of course, it's a slower process than I want it to be. But
the whole thing has been, right?
The whole thing has been. Miracle Baby is 2 years old, still not sleeping through the night. So, just a slow process, but just allowing Jesus into those hurting places and allowing him to continue to redeem parts of my life that I thought I would never get back. And I will never be who I was before this experience.
Right.
But I hope that I'm more of an enabled vessel for him now. Just like I said, with all my other pregnancy history, everything that we walked through, I knew how to trust him. I knew how to walk in his peace, So he does. He turns these hurtful situations, these traumatic situations into tools for us to draw closer to him. Yeah, he's good at that.
Well, and I love, like, whenever I've studied grieving or had other people pour into me in that way, but you so easily forget that the Lord cares about not just the big deal, right? Like, miracle, you're alive, your son's alive. He doesn't stop there in his healing on our grief journeys. He wants us to surrender and to talk with him about every even small thing.
Yeah.
Because he cares for us that much. And if the Holy Spirit is guiding our grieving, he knows what we need to do that day to grieve. And he knows how much we can handle. Right. And it's so much more than just a one-off thing.
Yeah.
It's like he wants us to walk with him day by day because it's all about learning to trust him and walk with him again, even after you've gone through that. And I also say again, because even maybe you've been a Christian for a long time, but you're facing something like you were just saying, a traumatic birth where your brain changed. It's like, to a certain degree, you have to relearn to trust him.
Yeah.
But on the other side of that, you have a totally new understanding of what trusting Jesus looks like. And it's all about that personal relationship, that desire of him to make sure you are healing at every level.
Right.
Which is a slow process.
Slow.
And maybe it'll never even end, like I think not until heaven, right?
Yeah, that's where I'm at now, is like, I think as long as we are living on this earth, he will be restoring our stories. Like, he will be, and refining us too. And that's a painful process to walk through sometimes. And we just don't get to control it. And that's so difficult because we just we just have to let it go. And, when I was a teenager, I toured with this choir in the summertime, and we would always end the service by singing "I Surrender All." And I've thought about this so much. Like, why were we saying that? We didn't know what that meant.
Right,
at
where
that
you were
point.
surrendering.
Like, wow. Okay. I get it now. But with age comes wisdom, right? And
Totally. Yep.
Yeah.
So if you could go back knowing how it would end, what would you tell yourself in the beginning?
I would tell myself that no matter what was about to happen, that God had me, not just my kids, not just my family, but that he had me. I would also try to tell myself that nothing that I did could have possibly changed any outcomes, couldn't have possibly. I guess I would tell myself, nothing's going to be your fault. Everything's going to happen for a reason. I carried a lot of guilt for a long time. Like, what if I would have made a different decision? What if I would have done this? What if I would have done that? As we all do, in those hard situations. But can we just, in the beginning of anything, just release that guilt? Can we just say, oh, we're going to walk in true freedom here and in true surrender and say, hey, I don't know how to do this. I'm just a sheep following my shepherd, and I'm going to say, hey, whatever happens, he's got me.
And that's not a bad thing, right?
No.
Like sometimes we have that connotation that if I don't know, it's bad.
Yeah, for sure. And, I love just the fact that he knows we're going to mess up.
Totally.
Like he knows we're going to make the wrong decision, and yet his purpose is still going to prevail. And so just trying to loosen my grip on all of that. If I could have enjoyed things more, I really wish I could have. And but yeah, I don't know if I have anything profound beyond just saying, man, I give that woman a hug, and I would say, you are going to walk through some stuff, but you're not going to be alone. And he has a purpose in all of it. Trust him. He's good. He's so good, and he loves you so much, and you can rest in his love. Even when you're alone in the hospital, you can rest in his love. Even when you are driving on scary winter roads with your father who's driving you don't always trust, with your babies in the back of the car, his love is so good, and he's got you. So I think that's what I would say is just trust. Just, it's okay to be at peace even. And I will say that his peace was upon this situation in ways that I didn't expect it to. I was able to confidently talk to doctors, to nurses, to medical staff, and be an advocate for my son in ways that I couldn't even comprehend before this happened. So he gave me wisdom. He gave me strength. He gave me words in that moment. There's nothing that I could have done to prepare for it. He gave me the strength I needed to get through that. So we can't catastrophize, right? Like, I know in pregnancy, you have a lot of anxiety about how things are going to go. And this is our third NICU stay. Like, he was our third baby to be in a NICU, and it is a terribly stressful situation. And there's no way to predict how it's going to go. Like, it's such an up and down roller coaster. So I couldn't
hour by hour, even.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way I could have prepared beforehand. So instead, I wish I could have just said, it's going to be okay. Whatever happened, it's going to be okay. You know? And Jesus was so clear about that. He told us not to be anxious. Worrying's not going to add a single hour to our lives.
Right.
We shouldn't worry beforehand because there's nothing else we can do. But he will be with us. He will give us what we need when we need it. I didn't need to know how to handle this situation before it happened. In fact, if I would have known the situation was happening before it happened, I would have freaked out.
Oh, yeah.
And tried to plan
Absolutely.
it, you know? Tried to coordinate everything beforehand. And it all went so well. For what it was, it all went so well. So, yeah.
Wow.
And then afterwards, I would tell that woman, please call Rhema sooner.
Oh.
You know, I would have
Yes.
told her, like, tell people that the thoughts are rough. Tell them that the thoughts are hard, without fear of judgment, without fear of, you guys never made me feel less than, right? Like, you never made me feel weak. You never made me feel like less of a faith-filled woman, right? Like, you didn't meet me with these comments like, why don't you have more faith? Like, why? You didn't say that to me. So yeah, I would say in any stage of life that you are in, make sure you're surrounded by people that are truly pressed into the Lord, that can encourage you and lift you up, so that when the waves do come, they're there.
Yeah.
Isolation is the devil's playground. And so don't stay there. Don't stay there.
And often that help comes from people you don't expect, like, which has been a theme for us so far, right? Like, that was a journey for me too, was, you know, to finally surrender and go, God, you're going to move on people's hearts to help me in my new journey of widowhood.
Yeah.
And it's true. I mean, different times, different people, but he always orchestrated and continues to do so what we've needed.
Yeah.
And that's humbling too, because I feel like, especially in our like late teens, early 20s, it's so important to have to like handpick out the people you want to be in your life. And
sure,
there can be that kind of pressure in Christian culture too, I feel like, if that makes sense. Even as we all navigate female friendships, which is like a landmine often. But it's just like, the Holy Spirit's going to use who he wants to use, you know? And sometimes our friends are in there for seasons and out for other seasons. And
absolutely,
just learning to welcome it all is huge.
Yep.
Yeah.
It is. And just being open to that. And again, taking your hands off of it and saying, I can't control all this. One of the best people in this entire story was a nurse that honestly, I believe, was handpicked by the Lord to be with us in that NICU. And I can't find him. So NICU nurse Brian, if you are listening, if anyone knows a traveling NICU nurse named Brian, please send him our way, because we would love to thank him and tell him that Miracle Baby's doing great. He was with us 3 nights in the hospital. And talk about being a surprise. When I first found out we were going to have a male nurse, I threw a fit. I was like, no, I had just started nursing the baby. And I was like, I don't want a man nurse. And the other nurses
surprise!
were like, the other nurse is like, sorry, like, who you got? So
it's Christmas Eve, okay?
Right? Like, so he walked in and I immediately felt peace come into our room when he walked in. And him and my husband just hit it off. I think they were great friends. And he was a dad too. And so he knew how to handle our giant baby in the NICU. Like, these giant 10-pound babies aren't normally in the NICU. And but he knew how to swaddle him and do all the things. And so it was just one of those situations, like you said, we can't know who God is going to use to help us. And I didn't know he was a believer until I had my music playing, and he was like, "What are you listening to?" And I think I had like the Maverick City Christmas music playing.
Yeah.
And he teased me because I was playing it on Pandora. And he's like, "Who uses Pandora anymore?" And I was like, "I do, Brian. Okay, I don't know what all you young people do, but that's what I do." And and so from then on, we talked more openly about our faith, and he was really just encouraging about everything we had been through. And he was the one who was super affirmative about the miracles that we witnessed, because he had seen that same thing happen and not go in that direction, you know. So yeah, you never know. You just never know who the Lord is going to use. Yeah.
So how have you been able to encourage others with your story? And also, like, how do you hope your story will encourage others as the years go on?
So I kept it to myself for quite a while. I didn't know what to do with this. It felt so big to me. It's like, how do I talk to people about this and truly explain to them how powerful walking with the Lord really is? I'll rewind to our first loss. I remember laying in that hospital bed and looking at my husband and saying, "I can't be quiet about this. I have to tell people about this. Like, people need to know about stuff like this. Like, people cannot go through pregnancy loss alone."
Yeah.
I felt so alone. And so that's what I want to do. I want to have these conversations with women who are going through these experiences of pregnancy loss and traumatic births. This is a whole new community that I never wanted to be a part of, right? But yeah, women go through these traumatic birthing experiences, and it changes you forever. And I just want to be someone who can encourage them and say, "Hey, let's talk through this. Let's talk through these feelings. Let's feel these feelings. Let's validate them. And then let's see what the Lord can do to heal you and to move on and to restore those pieces of your heart that you feel are lost and broken." I've been scared to tell it. I've been scared to say all the things out loud. And even still, like, I worry, oh, is my mom going to hear this? I didn't talk to people about these dark thoughts, you know?
Yeah.
But I think it's a very real thing in the Christian community too, that women are too quiet about. And so I just want to be someone that can support and can point people towards Jesus during these times. So yeah, like I've said, he's good, he's faithful, and he's true, and he will not leave you, no matter how traumatic the birth is. Some of these babies like to be dramatic. That's
They really do.
They really
And it's
do.
like, all of my births were totally different. I'm sure that was part of your experience. A lot of my other friends who've had multiple births. Yeah. It's just, you think you have it down and then you don't again.
No. Yeah. Like, what the heck, kids? We tease our oldest now because his birth was pretty smooth. And then like 4 hours after he was born, he just stopped breathing. Like, we tease him, like, "Why did you try to die, dude? Like, that was not nice." Landed himself in the NICU for 6 days. So yeah, it's, you just never know with those babies. So man.
I think another beautiful theme from what you just shared is about how I feel like mothers, and maybe, I don't want to send this to all women, but I guess if you are in a nurturing position of any kind, even if it's not as a mother, we tend to discredit and discount our own experiences, our own health, like as a caretaker, or even, maybe you're in a very intensive job where your expertise is very needed. And we tend to put ourselves on the back burner, and also to minimize grief, especially the small stuff. And I think today, the biggest thing I took away from your talk, in addition to like God doing miracles and being with you through everything, is that it's so important to acknowledge that and like advocate for ourselves. And it still feels so counterintuitive when you have 5 babies, or whatever it is in your life that needs your tending.
Right.
But those situations come up for us over and over and over again. It's not just a one-time thing. Like, okay, there's a stat I heard, because I'm a college professor, and when students
super smart,
come,
so
when students come to talk to women professors, they tend to bring out more of their emotional issues and their personal issues, as opposed to male ones. I know I'm being stereotypical right here, but I was like, I mean, it's kind of true. And I actually love that part about being an advisor. But it can be a heavy load to carry sometimes. It's just like, you're right, because I'm showing up to this job, and it's so much more than just numbers on a page. It's real people. And I want to see these students of mine grow and thrive and get the help that they need. And it's just something about that nurturing side of us.
Right.
That was a lot of rambling, but I think I'm just trying to get to the point of like you mentioned, that your body's falling apart and you're in the hospital, and you're still like really worried about how your other 4 kids are going to spend Christmas.
Yeah.
Which
no,
that's just how we are.
It was such a trippy experience. I remember, and anyone who's had a C-section knows this, like your legs swell up days after because of all the fluid they pump you full of. And so I remember sitting in the NICU and looking at my legs, and they look like that of which belonged on an elephant. And I was like, this can't be good. Like, I am not getting any time to rest or put my feet up. But I just had to press through, and so that mentality just stuck with me. And I was like, nope, I'm just going to keep going. And it really wasn't until very recently now where the Lord is pressing it upon my heart to love myself as a daughter of His. And that empowers me to take care of my kids and my husband better than if I put all of my needs aside. Like, that's not what the Lord is asking us to do. We need to take care of these vessels that we're in. And it's so hard as moms. Like, it's so hard to not just put it on the back burner. So I'm still learning, still growing in this area, but yeah.
Oh, me too. Yeah. But it's good to start to recognize that pushing should only be for a short season. Like, we do have the capabilities. You did what you needed to do to get through all those hospital stays and coming out of the newborn trimester, that first trimester. Right. And it's like, but if we stay in that place, we can't sustain that at all.
No.
And we can't control everything or carry everything on our own shoulders. And
and it was never meant to be all ours to carry anyways. It never was.
Right.
We love these kids so much, but ultimately they are their own people. And there's a continuous letting go with these kids, right? It's a really weird thing. It's hard. But it's there, and Jesus is with us through that too.
Yeah. Joia, thank you so much for your vulnerability, and you just spoke your story so beautifully. I'm so happy to receive that.
Yeah. Well, thank you for giving me an opportunity to do so. As I was dragging my feet and getting this podcast started, this was the thing that kept just twirling over and over again in my mind of like, oh, this is an opportunity to tell my story.
Yep.
I should do that.
I love it.
So here we are. Thank you.
And more to come. More of
absolutely.
Life to keep unpacking.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it. I really am.
Okay. Well, do you want to pray to send us out this time?
Yes, please. Let's do that. Jesus, thank you for being in this space with us. Thank you for everyone who's listening to whenever they're listening to this. Thank you so much for your grace upon us and your mercy and your overwhelming love that goes with us day in and day out. And your mercies truly are new every morning, no matter what we're walking through right now. And we thank you so much for your guidance in our lives and just that you look at us as your beloved children and that we can hold on to that. I pray that you go with anyone who may need you to stay close to them today, and that you'll bring us back to this space soon so that we can continue to tell of your goodness. In Jesus' name, amen.
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 All right. Well, thank you.
You're welcome. We'll do this again soon.
Sounds good.
All
Looking
right.
forward to it. All right. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We look forward to growing our community together. We want to continue telling the stories of where the veil between heaven and earth is so thin and we can see God at work in our lives. To help us grow this community, please do share this podcast. We're working on being on lots of platforms, but whatever platform you found us on, please give us good reviews, leave comments. You can even just add stars, give us a 5 out of 5, shameless plug. Also, if you want to contact us directly, you can find us on Instagram at restoremysong, or also send us an email at restoremysong@gmail.com. All right, we'll see you soon.